Hello, Internet, and thank you very much for listening to the Cloud Native FM podcast. And today we are talking about Kubernetes and day two challenges associated with Kubernetes. And my guest of this time is Haseeb Bodhani, and he is from the Rafay system. Thank you very much, Haseeb, for joining us on the Cloud Native FM podcast. And let introduce yourself first and your startup as well.
Absolutely, Simon. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So my name is Haseeb. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company named Rafay. I think I'm wearing the shirt. I wear it every day. Maybe I am. Yeah. So Rafay is in the Kubernetes space, but specifically we are in what we call the Kubernetes operations space. And of course, we'll spend a lot of time talking about it today, but at a very high level, what we do is help enterprises automate, govern, and operationally secure their Kubernetes environments on-prem in the cloud. All the things that need to happen to make your Kubernetes clusters work well is in the scope of Rafay. And we have some very happy large customers who are using our product today.
Absolutely. So let's dive a little bit detail in the past. Like when you think of this idea, like Kubernetes is a giant, there are so many pieces in it. Like you can start with a container network interface, container runtime interface. We have storage, we have ingress, we have proxies. There are so many opportunities for you to jump into the Kubernetes. Why you think about the operation space? And you think the Kubernetes is so hard and operation is even harder in Kubernetes.
Yeah. So there's a framing of the problem that I've been describing over the last many months now, and I truly believe it. So if folks have heard me talk about kind of company before, I do talk a lot about another company, which is VMware, because I believe that one specific product at VMware, which is not about Kubernetes, it's actually about VMs, is just an incredibly well thought through platform, which is vCenter. So many of the folks listening today may have experienced vCenter. vCenter fundamentally it's virtual machine center. The idea is to manage an environment consisting of VMs. But then to do that well, what vCenter has done such a good job of is, well, there's the VMs, the hypervisors, but then there's a network, then there's the storage, then there's the access, then there's the governance, then there's the multi-tenancy, etc. All of these things need to be solved for a virtual machine environment to work in a data center, right? And they got it right at VMware. So then similarly, when the enterprise community is moving from VMs to Kubernetes, and now particularly with Kubernetes, they're also going to the cloud, AWS or Azure or GCP, the problem is only going to be worse. And this is the thing that we recognized a long time ago, which was for an enterprise or for any company for that matter to truly consume Kubernetes in the way it should be consumed, they will have to solve these 8, 9, 10 different problems, right? Like you said, right? Just a networking problem, right? Network policy management, so that some namespaces can talk to other namespaces, but some cannot. This is work, right? Each of these components, then the storage layer is a lot of work. Like as an example, if you're running Kubernetes on premises, you have to think about storage. So getting Rook or Ceph to work well under Kubernetes, that is really hard, right? So each of these things is actually a lot of work for our customers. And the really successful startups, they have crazy plans, right? They take on some crazy ideas, right? And people go, this is crazy, this will never work. And actually, those are the ones that work, right? The crazy plans are the ones that work, because if it was obvious, then obviously everybody would do it, right? So when we started telling the world that, look, we're going to solve for cluster lifecycle management and access management and policy management and network management and storage, and people say, this is crazy. This is like, you're building 8 companies in one startup. This will never work. No, this is the right plan, and this worked. We have customers who use our product. Our customers can be up and running, as an example, with, let's say, Amazon Kubernetes or EKS, right? So earlier this week, there was a press release about a well-known company named MoneyGram. So MoneyGram is a known brand. People use it to transfer money. So MoneyGram uses Amazon's Kubernetes EKS, and they've been doing this for a while. They have been using Rafay as their operations partner, right? So if you read the content that they have published, the quotes that they have said, they basically identify Rafay as that key partner that enabled them to speed up their adoption of the cloud and their Kubernetes journey, right? So this is the kind of customer who has, who's been, extremely happy with this platform, and this is the right way to solve the problem. Look, it's a really big problem, right? But the thing is, Sam, somebody had to solve it, right? We can't expect our customers to buy 7, 8, 9 different products. It's never going to work out in the long term.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you made a wonderful point. Like it's been like 1, 2, 3 blogs I written recently, and that's make me why not I connect with the Haseeb and tell us about the view, because you are according to the recent blog post with the CERN, a very active journalist on the tech technology. They mentioned the top 10 that most startup in 2022, and you look at the list. They're a very wonderful list, and Rafay is in it. That's one thing. Another one of the articles that you mentioned is during the MoneyGram. It's been a wonderful, like having a startup and being collaborating with the giants like AWS and the other spaces. It's been a wonderful feeling. I think you should stop. I think a very small amount of time and you gain so much momentum. I seen you in the Kubernetes KubeCon. You talking to the people about the Kubernetes operation blog post. That what are the challenges you see. So I think you have gained very good amount of success in a very shortest amount of time, because in the Kubernetes, I think the operation is where people try to away from it, because it's look like a really challenge. Like you asking people that we solve your operation challenges, and Kubernetes is giant. Like it has networking, it's so many layers in it, and it solved some of the challenges. I think the great solution that you about adopted, and everybody listening to us, I think you should explore Rafay a bit more about what it does is with a Kubernetes operation platform. So, like, and I see one of your blog posts that recently in the net stack, in the new stack, and you mentioned the 5 pillars of the Kubernetes operation, like cluster standardization and life management, secure access and isolation, observability and visibility, governance and compliance, and third-party integration and maintenance. So let's start a bit from cluster standardization and lifecycle management. How you describe it, and what are the operation challenges associated with it?
Yeah. So the following question is something I ask a lot. Actually, before I go there, maybe we'll think about the journey of an enterprise, right, as they make progress, right? So usually there's broadly speaking 3 phases that an enterprise goes through in their journey to Kubernetes. So the first phase is they're considering Kubernetes, right? So there's some engineers who are trying it out, right? But they're early enough that they don't yet know what they don't know, and everybody ends up there. Then the next step is they have a handful of clusters running, and they have some experience now. Maybe they use Terraform to build an EKS cluster or 2 or 3 or 4. Okay. And then there's the third phase where an enterprise has multiple internal customers. All these application teams are the customer for IT, platform engineering. And all of them are now coming and saying, I need environments. Please give me some space, some compute. I don't want to think about Kubernetes. I just want to write my code. My code will get checked into GitHub or GitLab or whatever. And then magically it should show up on my cluster, right? So these are broadly speaking the three stages that an enterprise goes through. And what's most interesting is people who are already at a point of scale, right? They have many clusters, many internal customers. They love our product, right? Because they have experienced the pain, right? And we, funnily enough, end up learning the most from those customers. And those are usually our best customers, the ones who have experienced the pain, because they don't want to do it again and again. It's actually really hard, right? So one of the biggest things that this block of customers runs into is, and I ask this question of them all the time. So let's say you build a cluster, and you build a cluster, you install the right configuration for your CNI, and you install the right add-ons, right? Maybe you use Prisma Compute and Datadog and Prometheus, and who knows, right? 20 different things. And you took this cluster and you handed it over to a team and you gave them cluster role binding. How do you know the next morning the cluster configuration hasn't changed? How do you know? And the reality is you don't know, right? So what does a standard mean in terms of Kubernetes? So the way enterprises are solving this problem is they come up with essentially what we call a blueprint. So they come up with a blueprint of what a cluster or any compute should look like, and on top of which they end up allowing developers to deploy their applications. So they start thinking in terms of this layers of governance, right? So the platform organization owns the infrastructure and these add-ons that run on top of them, and then the applications sit on top of those. One of the key things we've done in our platform, which is probably the second most used feature in the product, is the ability to be able to standardize on the configuration in layers. Because the reality is, in a small company, maybe there's a few individuals who do everything, right? But in an enterprise, because there's so much scale, you're going to have infrastructure engineers, and then the platform engineers, and then DevOps engineers who do maybe the Terraform automation, and then you have developers who come in and deploy things, right? And we have to be able to meet the needs of all of these individuals, right? Otherwise, they will not be successful, which means the vendor will not be successful. Right, so we have to really think about making each of them successful. And then as you're scrolling down this list, right, like governance is a good example of this. What if a developer, and we've seen this, by the way, I'll share a story. We have a customer who filed a ticket and says, hey, so on a few of our clusters, we are no longer getting any alerts. What happened? Well, it turned out that those clusters were running outside of Rafay, and some developer had gone and deleted some components, right? They deleted actually the Datadog add-ons from the cluster, but nobody knew this happened. They only found out when the data was missing after many days. So that's a problem, right? So how do you make sure that these kinds of mistakes don't happen in a company? So that governance is really critical. And as an example of that, the product does many things. I'm not talking about all the features, but just interesting capabilities. We built a drift detection capability. Idea is that if the configuration drifts from what the standard is in an enterprise, you should be able to catch it. You should be able to get an alert saying somebody's seen something. What do you want to do? Do you want to fix it, or do you want to let it go? So we built this capability, and this is not a Kubernetes feature. This is something that we built on top of Kubernetes, but these are some really hard problems we've solved. The blueprinting concept, the drift action concept, and there's many other things around access management that we built that are truly valuable. And our customers are benefiting from it. And the thing that we always underscore to our customers, and our customers tell us, had they not used these capabilities from Rafay, the reality is at scale, they would have had to figure this out anyway, right? And that means they would have had to build capabilities and then maintain them forever, which is really expensive. I don't mean in terms of money, in terms of time, right? Now you have very sharp engineers who now have to write logic to solve these governance problems. And they'd rather just get it from a vendor like Rafay, right? So this is why Rafay, in a short amount of time, has become successful, because I think the team here really understands the enterprise problem. Kubernetes problem, yes, of course you have to understand Kubernetes, right? But then Kubernetes in the context of enterprise is a different problem, right? And I think the team here seems to have a lot of appreciation for that, which is why we seem to be, winning some really nice deals in the enterprise space.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really, like, I think all of the lists that you look at, the CERN blog post, you mentioned the Kubernetes starter for 2022. When you talk to that people, they look at they know the Kubernetes, how it's look and how it's work, and they understand the Kubernetes very wonderfully. And they know when they give Kubernetes to the customer, what are the biggest challenges they saw? What are the things, like one of the things you tell about, like in the day one Kubernetes, we have that kind of, let's say we have an OPA, we have a Kyverno that stood up. And when after day 3 or day 4 or after a week, somebody is broke out the Kyverno from the cluster. There is no policy engine is not there. But on the day one, it's there. How do we able to figure out, like Kyverno, is it mistakenly been deleted, or it's been not a part of the cluster of the day one? And that's the biggest challenge, and that's you mentioned, and that's I really like about your project and your innovation. And
no, please go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, look, OPA gatekeeper, look, Kyverno, just to make a point on Kyverno, I think so. I find that this is my opinion. The Nirmata team has done such a good job with Kyverno. I think it's a beautiful platform. I think they really understood that the pain point with Gatekeeper, which is you have to write the rego. But look, I mean, as an enterprise, essentially a SaaS provider for Kubernetes operations, right? We have to be sort of unbiased in our support, right? So we see that the majority of the enterprise customers want to use OPA Gatekeeper. Actually, they like Gatekeeper because that's where the market is right now, right? So we support Gatekeeper. If somebody wants to run Kaiwano, absolutely they can run that on the platform as well. And essentially, you described Gatekeeper. So Gatekeepers become, or any policy engine has become such an important capability. Look, the perspective here is that, as you were scrolling here, right, there were these 6 boxes on the screen, right above this. We over time will keep adding more boxes because we understand the roadmap of the DevOps team in an enterprise and the things that they have to automate to make all of this work. Right? We've been doing this for 4 years now. It feels like a long time. My hair's turned white in this 4 years, but we have a long way to go. Right? There's a lot more work to be done. And it's by the end of the summer, we'll actually be adding 2 new boxes to this, and then by the end of the year, we have another box coming. So we keep adding these things, and the reason why we do this, the reason why the team here doesn't feel like, well, I guess we built 6 boxes and we're done now, is because I think the perspective is not so much that Rafay is not a gatekeeper, OP gatekeeper company, or an access management company, or a GitOps company, or any of these things, right? Because these are all point products or point solutions that solve a piece of the puzzle, but then there's a bigger puzzle, which is operations, right? So let's step back and think about all of the things that an organization has to automate, the DevOps team has to automate over time, right? And look, the reality is our roadmap should match exactly the roadmap of a DevOps organization. If we didn't exist, Sam, right? You have experience in this, right? If companies like Rafay didn't exist, our customers would be taking a bunch of this technology from out there, who knows where, and then cobbling it all together. So our job is now to understand, hey, Mr. Customer, what are all the things that you believe are important to you? Right? And that becomes our roadmap. It's actually very simple. Like in terms of what we should build, it's actually a very simple conversation because we are solving the problems and they're all the same problems for all these enterprises. And the best part is, and this is what I'm really happy about this industry, there's a lot of clarity as to what the problem is. So all the enterprises we talk to, so we have like, healthcare companies on the platform. There's a bunch of logos on the website of healthcare companies. Of course, we have financial services on the platform, but then we also have the likes of like a Verizon or an HP on the platform. The roadmap of our automation and governance from an operations perspective for all these companies is the same, which is good. We want there to be sort of repeatability, right, in the problem. We want this market to standardize, right? And in my opinion, the market has standardized, right? And usually that's a sign of maturity, right? Which means that more companies will come, companies like Rafay will come about. We'll have multiple competitors over the time, by the way, because this is a big market. There'll be many companies. And more will come and they will solve exactly this problem. And that's good for all of us, right? We want this market to be big because there are 50,000 enterprises who will solve this problem in the next 5 to 10 years. 50,000 enterprises cannot be served by 1 or 2 companies or 3 or 4. There'll be many, many companies will solve this problem. And that's the beauty, right? There'll be so many companies solving so many different problems here. We're going to see a big market play out here over the next 10 years.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's companies they look into eyes on, like the company who's giving the whole solution itself, like an operation platform. Like we see some of the company, like we mentioned during the discussion, we have OPA, Kaiwano, we have some service proxies, we have service meshes, the GitOps, but we don't have a company that give you all these kind of features in the plane of the box and give you the operation sports. Like you need to know because everybody is getting access to your cluster, like DevOps people has hands-on with your clusters. The developers hands-on stuff with the cluster, the testers, the project owner, the developer advocate, they're all using your clusters. And somehow they keep adding some things and somehow they keep deleting some of the things. And somehow if you mess up with the Kubernetes production cluster, you're able to know, you need to experts to understand it, what should be in the production. And we have enterprises like Rafay would help you. I would definitely encourage you to that. And I think one of the good thing I think I really is learned today that is a very good checklist for the Kubernetes best practices. I think you go and should join, fill out the form and gain the access to this best practices checklist for getting started with Kubernetes ops. So I think it's really helped you in the long run as well. So I think we have covered wonderfully a lot. Like we have just tell me, like during the discussion you show, we see more boxes, we see more stuff, but tell us about the future roadmap as well. But we will get into that. The Kubernetes at the edge, we saw you listed in your website, like what the edge mean for the people and why you look at so seriously.
Mhm. So, look, I will, maybe the following will be a little bit different from the words that other people use, right? So, to me, the conversation is not about cloud or edge. Of course, we use these words because the market uses this word, but I don't think of it this way. Sam. My perspective is it's not a cloud or edge or data center problem. It's a distribution problem, right? So I'll give you the following is a real example, by the way. I can't name the customer, but it's a real example. There's a retail company that sells pizzas. They run Kubernetes in their stores. Why? Not because they want to do edge computing. That's not it. It turns out that for specific workloads, first they started by running those applications in the cloud, in AWS. And it was too far, depending on the location of the store. Sometimes it was just too far. The latency was really high. So then they said, well, I guess we should run them in the store. Okay, how do we do that? Well, I guess we can run Kubernetes in the store. Oh, but then how am I going to manage all these clusters? Well, I guess, and then it became a longer conversation. And, there's vendors like Rafay who can help with that. But it became a distribution problem. I need to distribute my application into these stores because in the cloud, it's not working, or whatever, data center, it's not working. So there's a renaissance, or there's a lot of stuff happening in retail and manufacturing companies who are looking to deploy applications closer and closer to where the end user is, the consumer of technology is. We have a partner on our platform who runs this AI/ML application where they deploy cameras in stores that Sam, you've been in, and in Pakistan these stores exist, where they have cameras and the camera feed goes into a cluster in the store, and then they can figure out, okay, so Sam walked into the store and his experience was not good because he had to walk around too much, or he had to bend down and pick up something, and that's not okay. We should maybe move the things at the bottom to the top of it. They do all this automation, but where's the application going to run? The application runs in the store. Right? So this is happening. Now, those customers, if you think about it, right, they didn't wake up in the morning and they said, I'm going to do edge computing. No, they were solving an application problem. I need my end customer to have the best possible experience. And to do that, my application needs to be distributed into the store. So this edge, which is the branch, right? Before we used to call it branch or retail store, right? This is the new edge, right? So this is happening. This is happening in a very big way. And we have seen this app play out. We have people who are using a product in this use case. There's another edge which people talk about more often, which is what's called the network edge, right? So the telco network, etc. So there's things happening. In my opinion, the retail or the manufacturing edge is actually moving a lot faster, right? But all of these things, whether you're deploying in AWS in multiple regions, in AWS plus Azure, multiple regions, them plus retail stores, you could have thousands of retail stores, right? This is a distribution problem. And what we had done day zero was understood that if we solve the multi-cluster application deployment problem, and remember we talked about the drift detection before, if you apply drift detection logic to applications, we can deliver a better solution. So the good decisions that the team made around distribution and drift detection on day one are allowing us to sell the same product that we sell for EKS into a company that is running 12,000 locations across the world. And that's the beauty, right? When you design things well, Simon, these things become use cases. You don't have to rebuild your product for edge or cloud. No, it just works, right? And I didn't build any of this. I'm just at this point in my career, I'm just a sales guy. But the team here at Rafay, I would say that they have unmatched expertise in this space. There is no team in the market that knows this problem better than the Rafay team. This is why in such a short time, they have made so much progress.
Yeah, absolutely, and absolutely agree to that point. Is what, yeah, because Kubernetes is so complex and very less people, the less engineer who knows Kubernetes how it's work under the hood, and it's know how when it's give Kubernetes to the customers, what are the challenges they are trying to solve, and when you need a small in a very small amount of time, you need success like this that Rafay does. It's mean the people working on that they know Kubernetes, plus they know the challenges that the people are facing, the enterprises are facing. They are everywhere. They are the edge, giving Kubernetes experience so close to you, like the operation challenges. That's a great news for everyone. Like I think you should look at this solution that you're providing. And I look at the show notes that what we cover today on the podcast as well is like I think you should go to the first best practices for checking the getting started with Kubernetes ops, critical factor for managing application and Kubernetes at the end, and managing access to all of your cluster at scale. So I think you should read those lessons as well, and that that's a part of the story. And now we are going to winding up the podcast. Let us know, like, if before we going to the KubeCon Detroit, what's new and what are you things? What are the key things that you showcase during the KubeCon in Detroit? So I've been prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll see you in Detroit. I will be there for sure. It'll be cold, I think, in November. There are some great capabilities that the team has built here that are sort of on top of Kubernetes. And so one thing that the team is taking very seriously is, look, we are a big beneficiary, right? We have benefited from the community, right? The open source community, right? I mean, of course, we are leveraging so much technology from the community, right? So then it's really, really important that we give back some, right? So if we are creating technology, we should find a way to contribute it back to the community. So some of the key capabilities in our platform that are the most loved features, right? We're gonna contribute them back to the community. So in the next 10, 12 weeks, we'll be announcing some capabilities in the platform that are, and truly the most loved features in the product, right? We're gonna contribute them back. Of course, we're going to continue to run a SaaS product. Enterprises will buy the SaaS product, but there are, engineers and developers out there who want to be able to play with these things. And maybe you're starting out and you want to at least experience them, and you're not ready to buy a product, which is fine. It's okay, right? Or it's our responsibility as members of this community to contribute back. So we will be doing that. So Sam, that's the big thing that I'm looking forward to in as we look to Detroit in the next when is it, 3 months from now, 4 months from now, that we want to take a bunch of these technologies and we do that. So the last 3 or 4 quarters, we have built a team, and essentially that team is our open source team, and they are working really hard to package these components as individual components, and we're going to start showing them. So as we start introducing these ideas, maybe you and I can come back and talk again, not so much about the enterprise problem, but those technologies, because I think that would be a lot of fun to do. And I think your audience, right, because you have so many the CNCF community members listening, they will probably find a lot of value in those technologies. So that's a big one for us. Look, from a feature perspective, we keep adding a bunch of things, and of course we'll keep announcing new capabilities. We're building so many features, but that's the one. The open source initiative is what I am really excited about, because I think it's high time, right? I mean, it's a burden on me, right, that we are extracting value from the community, but we're not giving back. We have to give back.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great news for me. If you're giving something to the open source, that's is absolutely a wonderful thing for me to heard about. And we are looking forward to the Kubernetes open source that you're providing, because you learn for the customer, you learn for the community, and you have been known how the people are solving the problem. What are the key challenges they are looking forward to? So having addition to the Kubernetes in the open source space is really a great asset for the whole community itself. So it's been a wonderful news for everyone. So thank you, Haseeb, for listening, for joining us for the podcast. So people who are listening to us, there are some cool news for you in the Kubernetes and cloud native community. We have a free course available for you for the get started with supply chain security on the Project 6 store space. You can join this free course and learn about this. And we have a Knative and Spring There are some there's a DevOps conference happening. So Knative Spring is giving a big talk by the Mauricio Salatino and Thomas Vital. It's been a wonderful talk to listen to too. And also I see the tweet from a guy during the OpenSSF conference happening on Texas, Kubernetes in a submarine. So I haven't listened to that talk, but I'm looking forward to when it's going to be available on the YouTube channel. Also, you can go to the reference blog post on the cloud native maturity model that we're talking during the conference, whole conversation today. The Open SSF blog, because they recently have a security conference. You look at what are the new features, capabilities are coming in the security space. And you have a virtual cluster. If you want to spun up your virtual cluster and speed up your local development, virtual cluster is for you. And also the Trivi, the scanner for the Kubernetes, for the your vulnerability scanning inside the your Docker images. Go check that out. We have a wonderful release like Orb Export, Helm, custom Helm scanning, custom extension, and more. So these are the news for me, for you, for to look at during the conference. And for the next week, I talking to the Faz Khan from the Van Cloud team on understanding the VPC Plus and DRAS. And thank you very much for the Haseeb. You've been a wonderful. I see you a wonderful. I always enjoy talking to you, and see one of your talks on the recent media. I really like your conversation. How you pinpoint the Kubernetes challenges, how you addresses the Kubernetes about that, and all the best wishes for you. You've done a wonderful job. Team done a wonderful job during the whole small time frame, and I hope it will continue to be a very wonderful startup as a moving forward. So thank you everyone for listening to us. Hope to catch up again, Haseeb, when there is some open source offering is being announced.
Yeah, let's do it. Look forward to that. Thank you very much,
Yes,
Sam. Really appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye bye.